Humans have an innate drive to create, and this is largely driven by the aspiration to greatness. Creativity is a way to challenge the mundane, to break the status quo. It is the hope to make dreams a reality. For many, religion fills this role. Throughout the history of humanity, various religions siphoned creative spirits, and in return imprisoned minds. Religion ensured that imagination and morality never strayed out of bounds. In some parts of the world, this is still the case. But when humans dare to challenge this thinking, innovation becomes evolution. Furry Fandom represents the next stage of human evolution. Sound crazy? Stick around and I'll show you. Or don't, but either way it's already begun. Since the beginning of humanity, it's always been essentially two groups, the dreamers and the conformers. As pack animals, humans form societies to survive, and that requires cohesion. It also places a smaller group in power over the rest by default. The ultimate authority is one of supernatural origin, God or gods, and developing theocratic systems of government served a dual purpose: subjugate the people into compliance and scare them with otherworldly threats. This system still works to this day in some parts of the world. Other places have traded this method in for a good old-fashioned police state. In every case, ever notice how the nonconformists are relentlessly attacked? And no matter how bizarre their ideas may be, the common theme is unsanctioned creativity. The Catholic Church was all for creativity, amassing collections worth billions in today's money. But every item served to further their agenda. Anything that fell outside that scope would be deemed heretical, and as with most religions, that would have dire consequences. For centuries, this was the way of life. Nothing and no one could ever get strong enough to effectively challenge such systems. Until... we love it, we hate it, we take it for granted. The internet is much more than a place for memes, the hub and vapid influencers. It's safe to say the minute the internet was born, the destiny of humanity was forever changed. In 1969, the US Defense Department had an idea. What if there was a way to connect computers so they could communicate with each other? At the time, they were as big as entire rooms, used punch cards, and performed very basic functions, so yeah, right. Nonetheless, they started a project to try and accomplish just that. It was called ARPANET, for the Advanced Research Projects Agency Network. Over the following 12 years, there would be triumphs and failures, but it was largely a game of governments and heavily funded research departments. As we all know today, the bulk of this innovation was taking place in Southern California, an area that would come to be referred to as Silicon Valley. And at the same time and place, another group was emerging. Starting in the 1970s as an offshoot of science fiction associations, Funny Animal was the early title for what would become Furry Fandom. But back then it was just a scattered group of individuals who tended to meet each other by chance, usually at a science fiction event. Many of these same people were what would be considered computer nerds, brilliant, dedicated, but also often socially awkward or shy. Lighthearted escape into fantasy worlds also served as a respite from the mentally taxing work in that field. Discovering there were others with similar interests was a comfort, and before long a little group began to form. By 1982, a key member of this group was a man named Mark Merlino, better known by furry name Cy Sable. He also happened to be a technological visionary. That same year, along with a friend, he created Tiger's Den bulletin board system. This was social media before social media was a thing. Furries wanted a way to interact and share even when not physically in the same room. These cyber chat areas could serve that function on custom intranets, which in time and with greater connectivity would become the internet. The Prancing Skill Tear, the furry house owned and ran by Cy Sable, also became a center of internet development. There were experiments with freaking and proto-hacking, development of various communication systems, the creation of full-out internet service providers, and the revolutionary MUCS.
I never seen a Bengal tiger with a purple stripe. No, I never heard a mouse with a deafening roar. But some I never seen before. If you're in a hurry to be furry, take the phone off the hook. And out the wagon or dragon or taxi and tell the book. If you're looking for a place you can't escape to, then you're in luck. Check the skin at the door to play with us in the muck.
MUCS is an acronym that likely stood for either Multi-User Created Kingdom or Multi-User Chat Kingdom. It was an online-based role-playing game that connected users across distances. Furries continued to develop and enhance the MUCS and the telnets that hosted them for years to come. In 1988, the entire internet only comprised about 60,000 people, and those were mainly government agencies and universities. But furries had already developed a large cyber presence. What's more, they were innovating systems for their community that would go on to be used by everyone else. On Guy Fawkes Day, or November 5, 1988, the New York Times reported on the Morris worm, using the term internet for the first time. For millions of people, this was an alien concept. It would be about a decade before the internet became part of day-to-day life for them. But the furries were already there. They'd pretty much built the thing. What had started as an outlet to blow off steam with so-called funny animals had evolved into a bold vision of a possible future. This nascent fandom was gaining influence and members on two fronts: the cyber realm and the artistic. The 1980s also had seen the rise of the zines, or independently published furry anthologies. Creators such as Fred Patton, Terry Smith, Gene Brashears, and Steve Galici looked to the skies and the horizon of the future for inspiration as they typed and drew their stories. They also created Comic Cons, launched furry conventions, designed complex computer and tabletop games, and revolutionized both the art and fantasy scene. Some of these works were meant to be silly or risque, but unsurprisingly the main themes were technology and outer space. Furries began to envision a universe of incredible innovation and filled with anthropomorphic life. And unlike Marvel or Star Wars, there was a clear, believable path to make it a reality. This wasn't fantasy for fantasy's sake. Furries began to tell stories of the next step in human evolution. There are details of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, autonomous craft, cybernetics, and advanced energy systems, among others. And not depicted in a flashy, of course this exists, it's the future sort of way, but in a painstakingly thought-out approach that conveys a sense of inevitability. Readers had the chance to view this world through the eyes of characters they grew to love. In the furry world of the 1980s and 90s, drones, genetic engineering, and artificial intelligence is already accepted reality. And when these things finally did start to become a reality, you could say things were starting to look exactly as the furries envisioned them. This is not surprising, since by this time, furries had overwhelmingly saturated these fields. I am not an expert in all things furry, I just love this fandom and try and learn as much about it as I can. So I can't reel off exact figures, I doubt many could, as a lot of furries don't overtly mix work and fandom for fear of harassment. A decent percentage of the furries I know personally work in and are good with tech, but when it comes to the major companies it's usually not as obvious. Yet we know they're there. Not just from the early days, but more recent examples. In 1996, some tech companies were actively advertising to recruit furries, while others were already furry-owned. But by 2022, it was estimated thousands of furries filled key roles at places like Apple, Google, and Amazon.
A lot of what goes on here is undeniably adult-oriented, and it's not for everyone.
They're weird. They're weird. They're the strangest thing I've ever seen here.
And here's a funny thought for the anti-furry crowd. The only reason you exist is because furries developed to maintain the infrastructure you're using right now. A key side point to consider, actually. Furry fandom as a whole is an effortless master of the internet. I mean, recently furries hacked NATO and the Pentagon and the Heritage Foundation for fun. If the fandom really wanted to, they could blink anti-furs out of existence. But the whole anti-fur crowd is somewhere between a minor annoyance and comedic relief, hardly worth the effort. Still, they should really play nice. Furries might decide to flex on them next. The internet is the furries' domain. You're just living in it. Anyway, back on topic. Since 2019, comments sprinkled around the internet joke in various ways about how the internet couldn't survive without furries. Except it's only halfway a joke. Sure, not every cyber worker is a furry, but consider the fact that since 1982, furries have been obsessed with the internet for their own usage, and in more recent times that interest has expanded to biotechnology and even space exploration. A welcome side effect is better technology for all, but for most furries the clear attraction is the chance to bring a dream to life. Tales of the Taipan Universe launched in 1992. I plan to cover this landmark series with more detail in the future. This was a revolutionary zine. It tells the story of humanity's future. Much like Elon Musk's vision for the future, it lays out how we colonize space, except we didn't go alone. By use of advanced recombinant DNA technology, we brought anthropomorphics with us. And true to human nature, these weren't just brave, strong, and beautiful companions to accompany us to the stars. Their creation also served to advance human avarice and brutality. But the end result was still the same. By the year 3500, humans and anthropomorphics had populated distant space. Interestingly, this fantasy vision of a future, post-Earth society, is what we are now on track for in reality. The driving force of furry creativity is to question everything and challenge what's possible. And at this very moment in time, furry fandom, artificial intelligence, and biotech are intersecting to shape the future.
The growing subculture of people who call themselves furries.
Well, your next door neighbor or colleague at work might be one.